All right, what is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are live right now at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap this week's Mets versus Marlins series, as well as all the other news and rumors that have been going over the past few days. We've got tons of stuff to talk about. Of course, the deadline with it that looming in T minus a week. Very, very close to that. But before we get into all of it, everything that we're going to discuss, I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel if you have not already for this very podcast that is now recorded on Sundays and on Thursdays. Today is Tuesday. That's kind of just how the series lined up. And they follow every single series of games. For those of you watching on playback and you want to join the conversation live, make sure to turn on post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat as of right now, I want to let you guys know that I do love reading all your comments, your questions, your concerns, and if you feel like you're being ignored, you are not being ignored. They are just being starred throughout the show to just keep the flow of the conversation going so not much gets distracted. Also, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on Twitter or on X, I guess that's what it's called now, or on TikTok, which mainly features my co-host who is not here today, Frank's instant reactions after every single Mets game, which is titled the Mets Frankly Post Game. For all of our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on any of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version that goes up at 9 a.m. the following day after these are recorded. So without further ado, it's time to begin episode number 67. You may notice visually that I am the only one on the screen, and that is because I'm flying solo this week. And also, I don't know if it's the health gods or whatever, they decided to give me a nice little cold as well. So if I sound a little sucky, I apologize. If I sound a little bit like a robot, if I doze off or, miss a few words here and then, that is the reason as to why. But as we stand as of right now, we are about 3 hours away from game time. The Mets are 3 games over 500, coming off of a split in Miami, which followed the All-Star break. So good to see. Good to see if the Mets just they come back from the big break. It's good to see everybody again, because we did skip the episode because of the All-Star break. But of course, content goes in and out. A lot has happened in that stretch. Let's just say that. We've seen a lot of minor league signings, some things that could possibly, escalate. I know that there was news about Christian Scott, which we will get into in a second, about him going on the injured list. We signed Jackie Bradley Jr. to a minor league deal. He was playing for the Long Island Ducks, killing it for them. And he is reporting to AAA Syracuse. The Mets also signed a catcher, Logan Porter, to obviously kind of accrue to the depth in the minor leagues. It has really nothing to do with the Mets. To the Mets' real situation right now, which basically is just Alvarez and Terens. They also acquired TJ Shook from Milwaukee for Tyler J, who was an unrestricted free agent, minor league free agent that we signed. He made a few outings for us. Didn't really bode well overall. We claimed Alex Young, who was on the Giants. He's a left-hander. I believe he is the brother of Danny Young, who has pitched fairly well for the Mets this year. And he was called up as the corresponding move for Christian Scott going to the IL. Obviously, I was kind of a little bit shell-shocked by that whole situation with Christian Scott, because I was about to go live and I was like, oh, great, more news that drops up, and, more news that I could possibly forget while running on a kind of a zombie brain as of right now. But the thing is that the Mets right now, they're at a point where A lot of these questions have to be answered towards the trade deadline as to where are they actually going to make a move? Are they going to hard sell? Are they going to soft sell? Are they going to soft buy? Are they going to strictly buy at the deadline? What are some of these pieces that are on expiring deals? What is going to be their future with the team? Obviously, we know that as of right now, it looks like Pete Alonso is going to be staying set, and we'll get into that later onto what has been going on with the Mets and the trade deadline. We will also have a very special event planned for the trade deadline the day of on July 31st. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Put on the post notifications, as said before. So let's get into what has been going on this week as best as I can, of course. Let's talk about this series against the Miami Marlins. Now, first things first. Any series against a Miami Marlins team where you split a 4-game set, you're in the current situation of every game pretty much counts. If you lose a game, you can lose a half game in the standings. There's a possibility where teams can jump you. It's still pretty tight in this National League wildcard. This wildcard doesn't mean the Mets don't have to do anything now that they've gone into the National League wildcard spot, the third one as of right now, with a half game behind St. Louis going into the day. A split with the Marlins, no matter how you put it, to me is unacceptable. It can't happen. I don't care if they're rusty coming off of the All-Star break. I don't care if you just have absolutely, nobody in the lineup that can that has been contributing or whatever. Everyone's struggling or whatever. You're not getting a good pitching performance. You're not getting a good hitting performance. I know that the Marlins have relatively good pitching, even though it has been damaged throughout the year. You can't split a series with them. It can't happen. And I said the exact same thing with Colorado before this break started. Not sweeping a Colorado Rockies team that is horrendous, it's unacceptable. It just can't happen. These are games you have to win. I get it. You can't win them all. You can't win every single game. No one's going to go 162-0. But these are teams that the Mets need to beat. There's no excuse as to where, well, this matchup was this match. No. These teams stink. These are bottom of the barrel teams. They should be taking advantage of them. 3 out of 4 was fine. Would have loved a sweep. A split? Not acceptable. Let's just say that. And I obviously want to get into the rundown of this series of what happened in these 4 games coming back from the All-Star break. Now, the first game, they started off a little bit flat. Shamania was not his best. 5 runs in 5 innings did not give us any distance. Velocity was a little bit down. He was not as effective. He's coming off of a hot stretch, which, kind of slowed him down a little bit against a Marlins team. Again, that should not happen. You had a 2-home run game from Jeff McNeil coming off hot in the All-Star break. Obviously, Jeff McNeil has been struggling all season. He's been one of the worst players in all of baseball, and he has had quite a series. You had a run batted in by Martinez, hit from Lindor, hit from Nimmo, Alvarez 1 for 4, Vientos 1 for 4, but the Mets were not able to cash in as we expected them, and they go 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position. Starting pitching did not help, and the Mets just found themselves in a situation where they just couldn't win the game. Game 1 loss. Game 2, pitchers battle in Miami. Luis Severino, spotless. 6 scoreless innings, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts. He was magnificent. Touched 99, was throwing harder than ever that he did all year in a Mets uniform. And the only scoring came from an RBI force out off the bat of Francisco Alvarez in the 4th inning. Bullpen was spotless. Jose Butto, who we'll get into, Danel Nunez, and Edwin Diaz with 3 scoreless innings combined in the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th, and the Mets won 1-0. Pretty easy, pretty simple, not much stress with the pitching side. Third game of this series, Christian Scott, who obviously we'll get into, not for his game, but for his health. 4 innings pitched, did not go far, was missing a lot of spots, made some really good pitches, made some really bad pitches, and obviously the main backbreaker being the 3-run homer given up to Jazz Chisholm, which surrendered the lead. Run batted in by Luis Torrens. I don't know why JD Martinez has 2 A's in his name on this graphic, but typos happen, guys. Another run batted in for JD Martinez. He's starting to move along these last 2 games after a short little slump where he has not really been producing at the level that we expect him to be. Jose Iglesias, 2-hit game. Hit from Alonso, 2-hit game from Vientos. Stewart came in to pinch hit. He got a hit, but the Mets were unable to capitalize a lot of opportunities, especially from the Marlins defense. Nick Fortes, you remember that guy who would kill us with the bat? Well, defensively, he had quite a rough game. He put the Mets in tons of situations where they could have cashed in runs, and they didn't. They lost 4-2, and they went 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position. Not good. Series finale, which was following a day game, which is kind of unorthodox, let's just say that. Usually series ends with a day game. David Peterson went 5, was not able to go much distance. Walking 4 batters, struck out 4, pitched fine, 2-run ball. The bullpen had to take over. Got a little shaky. Diaz got the save, but offensively, you had 2 home runs from Francisco Lindor, who has now tied Pete Alonso for home run total this year. So that tells you everything you need to know about Pete Alonso's season as of right now. You had another home run from Jeff McNeil, who has had a really good series. Once again, like I said, run batted in by Jose Iglesias, just continuing to produce in the margins. Hit from Nimmo, 2 for 4 from Martinez, starting to get off the schneid a little bit. Alonso 2-hit game, Bader 2-hit game, and the Mets settled for a split of a 4-game series in Miami. Now, I obviously want to start recapping this series the best way that I know how, and that being studs and duds, because I think that that's the best way to kind of flow it, even though we kind of save that towards the end. I think now we'll start doing studs and duds right after, because that's kind of the best way to explain the series that went on. Now, as for my stud, now I am always one to troll. I am always one to make fun of. I'm always one to make jokes. I will always be one to play a certain character online or whatever. But when it comes to here, I'm here to tell the truth for you. I'm not here to dance around things. But, I have to add a little humor to make myself laugh, of course. But let's just say this. I got to give credit where credit is due. Jeff McNeil had a phenomenal series, showing a lot of power, 3 home runs in this series, hitting the ball harder than ever, and he deserves the stud of the week. Now, listen, I'm still not a big fan of Jeff McNeil. I would like him to be one of the pieces that they do trade out of here if they're doing a soft sell or a soft buy. But when it comes to Jeff McNeil recently, he has talked about trying to hit the ball as hard as he can. And that's good, because that is a good priority to go to, prioritizing quality of contact. That was what he did in 2022 that got him the batting title. Jeff McNeil had a great series. He was possibly our only piece of offense in that first game, and he got us started. He started to spark us. I almost didn't put him in here as the stud because of that horrendous bottom of the 9th inning in the final game, where he kind of messed up my guy Diaz. If you go after Diaz, you and me have a problem. But overall, in terms of overall just contribution to this series, easily Jeff McNeil was the stud of this one. And I don't think that you can put Jeff McNeil in here. There's not going to be many chances, personally. I think that somebody in the chat said that something about Jeff McNeil saying that the Mets can't be fooled by McNeil hot hitting. He must go. I still have the same stance on that. I really do. I feel like at this point, at his age, at his current trajectory of his career, I think at some point you gotta cut the ties. Let's just say that. And he is not really a pillar piece to a winning team. He's very replaceable. Like we've said before, Jose Iglesias has done a really good job replacing him so far since he was called up from AAA. Let's just say that. And again, I think I have the same stance on McNeil. I'm not going to let 4 games completely turn me around, because we've seen him have hot series before. Let's not forget that series in Cleveland where he was hitting all those home runs. So I'm not full on investing into Jeff McNeil as the future franchise player of this team. And listen, I see this as well. Ranger Central coming in. Good Rangers fans. Awesome. Boosting his value. Got to appreciate it. Exactly. That's kind of how I see it. Because, 4 good games from Jeff McNeil, or 2 powerful games from Jeff McNeil, is not going to change my mind as to where I feel about Jeff McNeil and his future with this team. It's just not. I'm not really one to change my opinion that much. I really am not. I do stay steady. I like to analyze the outliers. That's just kind of how I am. Now, as for the outlier, because I do think that this was more of an outlier per se, but when we talk about Sean Manaea, wasn't a good start for him, and he did not do us any favors. If he was just a little bit better against a Marlins team that, like I've said, is not good, and you should not have split 4 games with, they probably would have won that first game. He was put in that role. He was put in the first pitcher off the break because Jose Quintana was sick. He's going to be pitching tonight against the Yankees, so make sure to tune into that when you can. But I think Manaea, easily, it just was not a good outing for him. It wasn't the typical bad outing from Manaea. Manaea usually just a lot of base runners, high pitch count. It wasn't really that. It was just a lot of hard contact, a lot of leaving things over the plate. Slider did not look good. Sweeper did not look good. Fastball was down a tick of velocity, so the effectiveness just was not really there for Manaea, and this was a rough game for him coming off of the All-Star break, especially after him getting on such a good stretch. Let's just say that going into the All-Star break. Now, coming out of the All-Star break, it just wasn't meant to be. Let's just say that. But overall, from this series, let's just say that there was some issues with driving in runs, particularly from the 2 games that they lost. Let's just say Pete Alonso, another main culprit as to why. He just has not been good with runners on base. He's not been good with runners in scoring position, and you just got to tell it like it is. And I understand that Pete Alonso is a fan favorite here. He always will be. But we need him to come through. We need him to provide that offense. And when he's not, he deserves that ridicule. He deserves that criticism. I'm not going after him and slandering him. I am saying that he needs to step up, or the Mets will not continue that type of offense. And I say that with kind of a cautionary tale, of course, because the Mets are top 5 in nearly every category so far this season throughout the first half. Without Pete Alonso without Pete Alonso actually contributing to the offense. And, it really does answer a lot of questions, of course, going into it as to what his future is going to be. It seems like he's going to be staying for it seems to be that he's going to be staying past the trade deadline. And right now, I'm on the trajectory of, you're getting a qualifying offer. You don't take it, well, try to get what you want from some other teams. Like that's the current trajectory I'm on with Pete Alonso. And if he wants to come back on a team-friendly deal, I'll welcome it, of course, because I know that he's better than this. Is it possible that he's regressed, obviously, because he's going into his 30s, and we've talked about it. We know that scouts have before have commented saying that going into his arbitration years, that you could see a steady decline. Let's just say that. If that's true, it's true. If it holds true, whatever. Right now, I'm not worried about Pete Alonso's future. I'm kind of worried about as to where, if the Mets can win a game day in and day out. But that's where I'm pretty much at. And this is another good point as well. Alvarez did not have the best series at the plate either. Overswinging a lot, lots of ground balls, getting under it. I've talked about Alvarez before him offensively. I have my concerns with the quality of contact because it can just be very, very streaky. And it really does show on the field of how streaky of a hitter he can be. Like sometimes he homers 3 times in 2 games and then he's homerless for the next 10 games. That happens, And when you look at it from Alvarez, of course, it's a bigger impact that he makes behind the plate. Like that's really all I really care about is what he is doing for these pitchers, because these pitchers really do need a lot of complementary, let's just say, elements for them to succeed. A lot of pitch to contact in this rotation. Hopefully that takes the pressure off a little bit when Kodai Senga comes back, hopefully later on this week, for more swing and miss type of stuff. But I think when you look at it from if the Mets can actually, build together these wins, and you believe that they can, a team splitting 4 with the Marlins, that's not good enough. All right. And I know that they're probably going to buy at the deadline. They absolutely should. Because they are in contention. But those types of losses, you're just wasting your time. You should be winning those games. Let's just say that. And listen, I'm not going to put pressure on the kid because I get it. Alvarez is a important hitter to this lineup. I get it. And MEZ saying that, he needs to step up as well. I get it. He has to perform a lot better. But he is a catcher. I really only care about him defensively as of right now. The added bonus is him offensively. He's too young, right? And, and another contributor, like we've just said, when we continue, Pete Alonso, step it up, right? Pete Alonso's got to step it up. I think we all can agree that. And there's no real, how can we project that he's going to start going again? Right now, he's in his contract year. We know what he's capable of. He needs to perform. That's it. That's all that I can really say about Pete Alonso. He needs to perform. That's it. I don't care about the excuses. I'm done making excuses for him. The team's offense has been good without relying on him. Remember when the Mets offense would just run through Pete? If Pete wasn't hitting, no one was doing anything. Well, now they've been 1 through 9. Again, like I said, top 5 in every category. So Pete Alonso's got to step up or, he's punching his ticket out of here. And I know a lot of Mets fans don't like that, but it's the harsh reality. And I'm saying that not to be a hater. I'm saying that as a fair criticism. He has not been good enough contributing like the Pete Alonso we know that he is. Let's just say that. And I think everybody can agree. The biggest Pete fan known to man, the biggest Pete stan, or whatever you guys call yourself right now, polar stance, or whatever you want to call yourself. I don't even know. You all know that Pete Alonso has not been playing to the standard that we need him to. It's just a known fact. Let's just say that. And I'm getting tired of it. I am really getting tired of it. And, the Mets are moving along. They're 3 games over 500. They're in this wild card race. And they're kind of moving along without Pete. Pete's been one of the worst hitters in this lineup consistently this year. It's a known fact. It really has been. And I've kind of overlooked this lineup, and I want to apologize to the Mets offense, to be honest, because I was only expecting, Pete Alonso, If he doesn't hit, nobody else's hits, because that has been the case for the last 5 years. But they've had a deep enough lineup this year as to where a lot of guys are contributing. A lot of guys are stepping up. You have the top of that lineup and Nimmo and Lindor, who have just been phenomenal. And, you have, the Braves coming up. You have the Yankees for 2 games. These teams may be struggling. These teams may not be doing the best, but they are teams that you can compete with. So, the Mets, I understand. A lot of people like to talk about the Marlins always giving us fits. They always play like an amazing team against the Mets. That's a narrative. It's a narrative. The Mets are 100% capable of beating the Marlins. And maybe you want to talk as rust, and you want to say that maybe the Mets just weren't there. They got to get back into the swing of things. There's a layoff or whatever. Still not acceptable. It's still not acceptable. You can't only take 2 out of 4 games from the Marlins. And this is another point. And Pantra's making a point here, saying that the Marlins don't play up, we play down. We shouldn't be doing that. Exactly. And I don't want to continue this narrative up, well, that's just the Marlins. The Marlins always kill us. The Marlins go after. No. Beat the Marlins. They're terrible. They're not a good team. You got to beat them. And, a lot of that having to do in this series particularly with runners in scoring position. And M. Easy makes a really good point, saying if Pete destroyed the Yankees and Braves this week, he would shut up guys like me. Same goes with me. Because I feel like I've always been the person who said, I want Pete to be the guy. But if he's not going to be the guy, we're going to have to look elsewhere. It's the reality of the situation. That's kind of how you look at it. I mean, it's kind of just the hard truth here. And listen, I understand Carlos Ortiz are coming, like the Mets are the main, the Marlins are the main bugaboo. I mean, that's how I say, like, I get it. I understand. History is not on our side. The Marlins always get these pesky little wins against us. But I'm just done, man. I'm done making those. I'm done making those excuses. I'm done doing it. Can't do it. Rangers Central coming in. It's the same thing with Rangers lose to Columbus. It's one game. You're not going to win them all. Nobody's saying, but beat these garbage teams. It's inexcusable. I believe Rangers Central is Python, right? Is that it's Python? One of my guys from Twitter. You got to beat these teams. You got to beat them up. You got to destroy them. Okay, yeah, it is. Okay, cool. Good to have you on here. I think the best way to look at this series is you hope that it's just rust. You really do hope it's rust, because they can't come out flat against the Yankees tonight. They can't come out flat against the Braves because they are in striking distance. They have been given a situation where, I mean, it's on a silver platter for them right now. Okay? We have to realize how good the Mets have it right now. They have such an opportunity to do so much damage. The Braves are banged up. And you never like to see players get hurt, but the reality is the Braves are banged up. They're not the dominant Braves that they have been for like the past decade, it seems like, with them winning the division every single year. They're not going to win it. Philly's going to win that division. Atlanta just took another hit with Ozzie Albies this week. The Mets are 3 games behind the Braves. They have 4 games coming up later on this week against the Braves. So they got to win those games, and they could possibly bury the Braves beneath them if they beat them. You just can't lose to these types of teams because, again, you're going to need those games in the long run. It's just the problem is that when you look at it as a whole, I'm just saying as a whole, the Mets are in such a tight spot as to where back-to-back losses can put them in deep shit in the playoff race. That's how you're kind of looking at it. They got to keep winning, and when you have the opportunities to win, like the Marlins, you can't take just 2 out of 4. It can't happen. I don't care if you're layover. I don't care if you haven't played for 10 days. I don't care if you haven't played for 3 weeks. You should be able to beat the Marlins. Those are teams that you got to beat. It just has to happen. We should not be having nail biters in Miami. It shouldn't be happening. Now, we don't play Miami for the rest of the year, or we don't play in Miami for the rest of the year. That's out of the question. Maybe that's all we need. Maybe we just don't like playing in Miami. I don't know what it is, but the narratives have got to stop. The Mets, they need to beat these teams that are beatable. Miami is 30 games under 500. Anything less than 3 out of 4 was unacceptable. They split. It's unacceptable. Just can't happen. And you move on. You move on to the Yankees, of course. Yankees have been struggling, of course. But, those are games that you got to win. You just have to win those games. Now, speaking of winning games and key pieces to this roster, to this team, as to why the Mets have had victories, holding down the fort, unspoken heroes, let's talk about Jose Butto, shall we? And his new role. Ever since he came back from AAA Syracuse, he has been put in kind of a long relief-ish bullpen role. Let's just say that. And so far, it has been very promising. Hasn't been perfect, but it's been promising. Jose Butto has been one of the most reliable bullpen arms we've had this year. And he has not been in the bullpen for that long. He was in the rotation for the beginning of the season. He was rolling. Then they sent him down. Didn't really understand that. Now with Scott possibly out of the rotation for at least 3 weeks, we don't know the severity of that. Most likely Jose Butto is going to have to move to the starting rotation. I believe that's probably what they have to go with because they still need a 6-man rotation for when Senga comes back. So with Jose Butto, it has been great. He has been a breath of fresh air this year. It has really come out of nowhere to really impress, whether it is in the rotation or out of the bullpen. But let's just say, for those of you who know I like the wordplay, it's been a Butto full sight. Does that work? Does that work, guys? You like that? All right. Well, out of 48.2 innings pitched, he has struck out more than 26% of batters. The walks have been still an issue, which is one of the main reasons as to why the peripherals are not as promising as you think it is. But let's just say that Jose Butto is a completely different pitcher from what he was 2 years ago, or maybe even a year ago. Remember when Jose Butto was like this low 90s guy who gave up a lot of fly balls, lots of home runs. He kind of mixed in a changeup as well to kind of tunnel with his not okay fastball. Didn't have much bite on it. The secondary stuff wasn't great. He was like this 3-pitch guy who seemed like a spot starter at best. Well, right now he is a 5-pitch arm. Let's just say that. He's come a long way. And let's just say Butto is not an explosive arm. He is by far not a frontline arm. He is by far not, a featured piece, a guy that's going to blow you away. But overall, when you talk about overall stuff, it's about average, above average on its best day. But one thing that he does fairly well is pitch shape. We already know about his changeup, which is a huge plus pitch for him. It has been since the beginning of his career, his minor league career. And if you're able to tunnel that across your four seam, which we've talked about vertical approach angle many times on this podcast. You want it hovering around negative 4.3 vertical approach angle. That's near elite. That is some near elite stuff right there. So he is able to tunnel that stuff fairly well. Then you add in a sinker with 15 inches of run. Pretty impressive, let's just say that. His slider with tons of spin, tons of late movement, knows how to pitch from east to west with that one. And let's just say that he has really become more of a complete pitcher. And that's the main reason as to why he has become so valuable to the Mets pitching staff. He has given up one earned run in 10.2 innings out of the bullpen since being recalled from AAA Syracuse. His slider, which he didn't really have much of a feel for when he came into the majors at first, he has a 46.3% whiff rate on it. And his changeup, of course, which is his best pitch, which we've talked about before, 42.1% whiff rate on that. Also coming in with ice in his veins, let's just say that, he has stranded 83% of base runners that he has inherited and issued on base. Now, I'm not saying that Jose Butto is perfect, because there is still some control issues. Let's just say that. But he has been able to make really good pitches. He's been able to get a lot of swings and misses. We're seeing this guy touch 95, 96, 97 consistently at this current point. He has just become such a different pitcher. And let me just say, I kind of owe the guy an apology, because I didn't really see him really in the equation as much, maybe a depth starter, spot starter, like I've said. But with a guy like Jose Butto, you know, I was more interested in more of the guys like in the upper levels, whether you're talking about, you know, Mike Vassell or Dom Hamill, or, you know, when Blade Tidwell got up here. Jose Butto kind of flew under the radar. And he has really made the adjustment to become a more complete pitcher, and he's executed it fairly well. We already know about my guy, Tyler McGill. We know how much of a soft spot I have for him. I will never stop having a soft spot for him, even though people call me crazy and people saying that I'm defending a bum. Maybe he is a bum. Who knows? But Tyler McGill added a lot of pitches. I'm pretty sure he's like 7 pitches deep right now. But he hasn't been able to execute it. Jose Butto has been able to do that. Better than David Peterson as well, may I add. Who David Peterson, I'm not really convinced should be part of the rotation going forward into a playoff stretch. But, you know, if you just look at it face value, his ERA is good, so who gives a shit? Not talking about David Peterson. Let's just say Jose Butto. I have been open saying that I want Jose Butto back in this rotation, because I feel like he is definitely gives you more of a chance of getting length out of the starting rotation. And that pretty much puts on a little bit more emphasis to acquiring bullpen talent at the deadline. And we know that they're going to have to acquire at least 2 or 3, maybe even 4. Who knows? Excuse me. Now, when we talk about Jose Butto, he's been able to give you solid distance, and he's really a rubber arm. I mean, you know, if you want to knock on wood and you're a superstitious person, you know, he's been relatively healthy throughout his entire career. So when you talk about Jose Butto as a possible option to the back end of this rotation, which with how his pitchability has been and how solid he has been, able to get swings and misses, put away batters, pitch to contact, as compared to what he was doing in his minor league career, I think that they need to take advantage of that. They got to ride that hot hand. And I feel like if I was talking about this 3 hours ago, I would say, well, trade Quintana, move him out of there, you know, so you can have a swap those places, you 6-man rotation with Senga. But now with Scott being placed on the IL, which a lot of people in the chat are talking about, it kind of differs the equation. You might actually have to trade for a starting pitcher now. Because I know that I wouldn't put Tyler McGill back in the rotation. I would not do that because they're going to have an extra starter to bring up, or they move Jose Butto to the rotation. But they're going to have to wait because, he needs some days of rest after going multiple innings out of the bullpen multiple times in this series. So when I look at Jose Butto, I see this as a very stable, very solid arm who has really been able to maximize, his ceiling as a pitcher. And it's been really impressive of what we've seen from Jose Butto. And, again, I would have had a different opinion on this like 3 hours ago if Scott didn't go down. But I want to see Jose Butto no matter what with Scott out now. I do want to see Jose Butto move to the rotation. I feel like he can give you some length. Let's just say that. I am a little bit more confident in him getting you outs, getting you innings, as compared to somebody like Jose Quintana or David Peterson or Tyler McGill, Joey Lucchesi, who's still with the organization, who Mets fans were so upset to get rid of, even though he's not really worth much. Even Minaya as well has some volume issues as well. We saw that in this Miami series. John G coming in with $10. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. Saying, holy crap, you finally got rid of that horrible green screen background. I know. I finally did it. I know. It took a while, but I finally did it. Got the backdrop here. Yeah, that's our new background there. So thank you for noticing. And let's just say there is, with the Mets starting rotation, and I want to get into Severino as well, but let's talk about Christian Scott for a second. We all know that there has been a little bit of, I don't know if it's controversy, just back and forth, with Christian Scott as opposed to his innings limit and his workload. The truth is with Christian Scott, and I can't say I was visibly frustrated with this because I understand why they wanted to limit his innings, mainly because he was basically a converted reliever from like 2 years ago. Like, he's not used to this starter workload, and they want to have him as a starter because he does have good stuff. He's obviously struggled. He's had those, I get it, home run issues. Again, I personally would much rather a pitcher have home run issues than struggling to get the fucking ball over the plate, because you can get a lot more volume. But when you talk about the innings of Christian Scott, this is kind of the situation that the Mets were kind of afraid of. He has not been able to go deep into games. They've kind of limited the pitch count or whatever. And is it possible he's not used to that workload? Possibly. But I kind of see it as this is a converted reliever who's just not used to this workload, but has major league ready stuff. And he has a lot of growing pains to go through. And this is going to be another one. And let's just say the UCL sprain, as Daniel said in the chat here, saying that the UCL ligament, that is the one that gets replaced in Tommy John. So they're going to have to be very cautious with this as to where it's a sprain. We don't know what the severity is yet. This news just dropped like 10 minutes before I went live. So he's going to undergo the MRI, and we'll see what happens there. And that's the one Christian Scott like this is one of the main reasons as to why I would put up the counterpoint. What we're going to talk about with Severino in a second, but with the Mets overall rotation, is it possible that maybe they need to add somebody at the trade deadline? Obviously, you have to see what you get from Senga, because Senga is going to be on a pitch limit. When he comes back, he's probably going to be on the 75 pitch limit when he returns against the Braves. But I think that when you look at it, the rotation with taking Scott out of the equation, Jose Butto needs to be slid into that role. So you don't really need to do any other transactions. And I think you know, with Christian Scott, he already did have elbow surgery. I don't know. It may have been elbow surgery. I don't know if there was it's also a shoulder thing as well. And maybe it's a possibility. And this is a good point where from Ranger Central or Python, whatever you want to say, saying that not that I'm rooting for Scott to get Tommy John, but if it's a need at some point, I'd rather him need it now versus when this team is in the middle of a World Series contenders. And that's what I believe. I agree with that as well. I think that with Christian Scott, it's a very fragile situation right now. I think they're trying to build up his arm, but they're not trying to push it. And it's really hard to know what the situation is without knowing what the diagnosis is, obviously. But when you look at it as to where his health is very important, if they have to take it slow, they have to take it slow. I haven't really been someone who is mainly invested into Christian Scott as the main piece, the guy to put into this rotation right now. I've kind of just been like, okay, let him pitch. Let's see what he does. Let's see what he's able to do. And we've seen the capacity. We know what the problems are. I think that he has tons of room to grow. There's tons of growing pains. I think that they've handled it fairly well, but I understand why it's confusing to a lot of Mets fans. I get it. I do get it. Let's just say that. And then this is another option. Easy coming up here saying that James Paxton just got DFA'd. We could sign him. James Paxton was on my list for this offseason, coming off of a really good year overall stuff-wise. Let's just say that, applying those tools. From Boston, he was hitting like 97, 98 consistently from the left side. But with the Dodgers, he has not had a good year. Velocity has gone down a tick. So I don't think that that's at the top of their list right now. But it is an option. Let's just say that if they don't want to go spending assets to get a starter at the deadline, it all depends on what workload you get from Senga, how this goes forward with the health of this rotation, because there are concerns there. And there are concerns for the other pitcher that I want to talk about as of right now, being Luis Severino. Luis Severino, no matter how you put it, has been a rock for the Mets. He has been one of the rocks in this rotation. He's been able to give them consistency. And after signing a one-year deal with us for $13 million, he has really come to prove it, that he's still got more in the tank after being one of the worst starting pitchers in all of baseball last year, coming back from injury. Severino has been a very, very good story. Severino has not been the top 10 ace caliber pitcher that he was with the Yankees, but he's been really, really good. And let's just say that we fear the Sevi roar again, which has been very, very impressive. Let's just say that 3.5 earned run average, expected ERA towards managing contact, of course, but that's just more quality of contact as compared to what he can control. Pretty much at the same. Not walking batters. Strikeouts are down, but he has been inducing a 48.4% ground ball rate, which is in the 77th league percentile among pitchers. This is the first time he has pitched past 100 innings in a season for the first time since 2018. He has been really banged up throughout his career, and he has a career best in average exit velocity against opponents. His sweeper, which he's been really utilizing fairly well. And, he does have the kitchen sink, of course, not throwing as hard as he used to, but he was able to maximize it last game that he pitched in this series. He was hitting 99. He hit it like twice, I think. But overall, he has really had a great season. Nonetheless, I mean, he really has been Carlos Ortiz saying, Sevy has been our best pitcher. And I come to agree with him. I really can. Overall consistency? Absolutely. Now, the question is, with guys like Luis Severino, you have Jose Quintana on his way out. Shamanaya might not pick up his own option. You never know. Do you extend Luis Severino? Is this a guy that goes into the conversation where they need to bring him back? Now, I asked in a poll, I asked this chat what they believe that they should do. Now, I asked if they wanted to extend Severino to a 3-year extension. 61% of you are saying yes. 26% of you are saying no. 13% of you are undecided. Now, I have made this clear many times on here that I have never been one to jump at really... I've never been one to really jump at retaining 1-year deals. Because it's not like I'm just saying this is as a superstitious thing. I more say it as kind of the length of reality. Guys get their contract year. They play well. Sometimes they underperform the next year when you bring them back. I personally have this internal fear, and I don't know if any of you agree with me. Let you know if you do. You can disagree as well. That this is the best that Severino is going to be able to offer. And even though Severino has been really good, there is a level below it, let's just say that, which is close to what he has been. He has not been a frontline starter. He has been our most consistent starter, but he has not been a frontline starter. You also have to bring in the factor of his health. You don't know how he reacts to another, a season where he has pitched over 100 innings. They've talked about this on the broadcast. They said that they're going to try to limit the innings of Luis Severino going towards the end of the season, which I think is very smart. But here's the thing. The other point of view that I have is with pitching. Pitching is the most injured position known to man. I get it. The Mets have not had the consistency in their rotation. They've had a lot of traveling pieces in and out these last 4-5 years. I personally am one who prefers to develop your own pitching because it's young, it's controllable. They have a lot of movement to go in their career. With Severino, I was one of the guys who was 100% on board. There was a lot of Mets fans who got pissed off at this move that said, well, he had a 6.5 ERA last year. He's bad. He's awful. He can't be better. He will be even worse. Because that's kind of how Mets fans look at it as to where, or any fans to that matter, they look at the results and they see it as this will continue to happen no matter what. Well, that's not the case because Severino, at the end of the day, has been, like we've said, the most consistent starter on this staff. And now you look at it from the same trajectory. Is Severino going to repeat this going forward? Is Luis Severino going to stay at this level, maybe be even better? The 3.5 ERA guy, that's your number 3. That's a number 3 in your rotation. We already know that he would slot behind Senga. Senga's your number 1. Is he going to repeat that? It's really hard for me to tell. And I understand that a lot of people talk about it. We've talked about it before, where you shouldn't take it for granted if guys can pitch in New York. Severino's been able to do it from both sides of the pond. The Yankees and with the Mets. So it's a valid reason as to why somebody would want to bring him back. I get it. But there is some factors involved where I'm very hesitant, where I'm like, okay, maybe I'll look elsewhere. I'm not one to lock myself in to 1-year deals. I was the same way when it happened with Adam Ottavino. Different story, of course. Relievers, finicky, that whole thing. But with Severino, we do have injury concerns still. He's been healthy all year, but we still have it, right? So it's really hard for me to say that Severino should just be brought back because of what he did. And that's kind of one thing that is always the factor is to free agency. Do these guys, give you what you paid for? They almost never do. The best way to do it is to catch lightning in a bottle. But with pitching, I have come to the point where the Mets have taken too many risks. Whether when it was Verlander and Scherzer giving them all that money, I'm personally just done paying for pitching. I am really done opening the wallet for pitching. And this has been mainly explained by Steve Cohen as well, saying pitching is expensive. He's happy that, a lot of these pitchers are developing in the minor league system because they are. The problem is that if you were to give a 3-year deal to Luis Severino, yes, a part of your rotation will be solidified, but we don't really know what Severino we're going to get going forward. We just don't know because let's just say there's a lot of factors that go into it. Like I just said, you could have his Yankees version. You could have his last year as a Yankee version where he was one of the worst pitchers in baseball. You could have his past peak Yankees version where he couldn't stay on the field for like 4 years straight. You could also get this type of Severino. You just never know. With pitchers, especially mid-rotation pieces, I feel like it can lean either way. That's just how I look at it. And I'm not really running to the edge to re-sign somebody like Luis Severino. And listen, I was the one who was really big on this signing. My two co-hosts, you guys don't remember, they didn't like it. This wasn't the guy I would get. I had a huge screaming match with Andrew on Luis Severino. I don't know if he was trolling or not, but it's Andrew, so he probably was. But you guys remember, I was really in favor of this deal because there was a lot of upside here. Now, it goes to the same way, but it swings the other way. Is he going to repeat this? If you say the answer is no, you can say that again. And I understand, and this is a good point as well from Carlos Ortiz saying that we don't know what we're going to get with any pitcher. And that's true. You take the risk with everyone. And if the Mets were in a better position as to where they were one pitcher away from the World Series, like kind of how, like World Series contention, kind of how like the Orioles were. They needed pitching. They got Corbin Burns. That's how I would look at it. I'd say, okay, well, bite the bullet on this one. You need these guys who are experienced. But with Severino, we've had a lot of different versions of him. We've kind of had like this modified version of Severino where he's kind of reinvented his game. He's more of a pitch to contact guy. He doesn't throw as hard. So, there's some guys that you open the wallet for and some guys that you don't. With Severino, you just don't know what you're going to get. And who knows? Maybe he does fall off for the rest of the season. Who knows? Like, there is a possibility where he struggles because there has been some blowups from him. We have seen tough starts from Luis Severino. We've seen tough starts from everybody in this rotation. Aside from Senga, who, we haven't seen at all, and we will see. But how I look at it with Severino is what I'm investing in right now. Is it worth it to shell out money for starting pitching? Especially when you're Severino. and you've had a lot of injury concerns. Is it worth it? And that's kind of how I look at it. And the same thing goes for Harrison Bader as well. Harrison Bader's been great, but he's on a 1-year deal. Like, listen, I've always just been one to like take it or leave it with a 1-year deal. That's how I was with Adam Ottavino. Comes back, wasn't as good. Different story. He's a reliever, different situation. But I've never been one to be very desperate as to where I need to bring these guys in, because also I just want to see the team get younger, right? I've always been one to kind of be like, this team needs to get younger. They need more upside. They need more tools. They need more speed. They need more athleticism. We talked about this so many times. But when you talk about it from the team building standpoint, I get it. I understand. The guy has done it well. You don't want to change it. Like that's something, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I get it. But as someone who looks at the advanced data, as David Stearns does, he saw something in Severino that he could untap. Does he see him sustaining that going forward? Who knows? And I hope that Luis Severino does get his payday, because he's had a tremendous bounce back season. He's been able to stay healthy, and he's been the Mets' most consistent starter. But I'm not one to say that he is my main priority in free agency. We need to bring him back. We need to lock him down. He is a future piece to this team, because it's just not true. It isn't true. I really have just never been one to retain, the pending free agents. I have never been one to be for that, because I feel like if they weren't going to do it with Jacob deGrom, and this is a whole different story, and this is kind of just rambling as of this point. Jacob deGrom was like the last guy that I was willing to bring back. And then he's also a good example of that too. He got hurt immediately after he signed that deal with Texas. So I can't rely on pitching to stay healthy. We need pitching to be out there every 5 days. We need to get volume from them. And even though Luis Severino has been able to stay healthy this year, I don't know how he's going to do that full on. And listen, Luis Severino is not in his mid-30s like Chris Bassett was, or like how Jake was, or Max, or Verlander. With Severino, there still is the injury concern. You still will have it. And that's kind of where I'm very hesitant. I just don't want to pay pitching. I really just have come to the point where I just don't want to pay pitching. That's how I look at it. And, speaking of free agents, Daniel Capps makes a good point. Fellow Raider fan, hell yeah. Saying, the Mets saying they're not trading Pete. I hope we don't lose him for nothing. And this is kind of how I look at it with Pete. And I'm just going to say this real quick, because I don't want to get into a full discussion into Pete, because I feel like we've talked about him way too much this season. And there's other topics I want to get into. With Pete Alonso, I see it as the Mets, if they were to give him a qualifying offer, he doesn't take it, he goes somewhere else. The Mets would get probably a 4th-round pick, right? Anything that you get back for Pete right now at his current value is pretty much the same as whoever you draft at a 4th-round pick. You guys get what I'm saying? So they don't need to trade Pete Alonso for asset management right now. He's one of those players that you can give a qualifying offer to. He doesn't accept it, he goes somewhere else. But that's pretty much the same value. A 4th-round pick type of prospect you're going to get back for Pete Alonso right now. That's kind of how I look at it. That's kind of put them in that scenario. And it's a good scenario to be in, because it's kind of just weighing out the value fairly well. Because Pete Alonso hasn't been playing well. His value is down. He's in his free agent year. So we'll see what they do with that, because I think that Pete is going to stay for the rest of the year. We have him for the rest of the year, and His future's pretty much unknown. He's kind of digging his grave, though, with how he's been playing. Let's just say that. Yeah, that's just me. I'm just saying that. He has not been good. Let's just say that. I think when you look at the possible return you can get from Pete Alonso, he's a pending free agent. Get something back for him. Like I said, it's the same thing as a 4th-round pick. Same thing. Same value you're going to get back. Like, let's just say you get a role-playing for a pitcher who's like a fringe AAA pitcher, because that's all you're really going to get back for Pete Alonso. Or maybe a reliever, like a AAA reliever. That's pretty much what you get from a 4th-round pick. A 4th-round pick is younger as compared to somebody who probably has flopped and may not ever be good that you get in return for Pete Alonso. That's how I look at it. And a 4th-round pick may not be that flashy as compared to who can we get with the team builder and, let's play fantasy baseball. I get it. But the Mets are in a winning position. They're not going to trade Pete. It's not going to happen. So that's kind of how I look at it. So with the trade deadline less than a week away, I think. What is it? Or like 8 days away. We have had some recent reports come out about the Mets' plan going forward. There's been stuff about them soft selling, soft buying. Maybe they sell off some pieces that are expiring. And this is kind of what I want to do to recap what is going on. And I did say it earlier in the show, but for those of you who are looking for some trade deadline content, we will be going live for the last 3 hours of the trade deadline, and we've got a huge stuff planned. So get ready for that. Mark your calendars down from 1 to 4, which is the trade deadline on July 31st. We have plenty of stuff planned for that. We're going to have special guests. Maybe we do like some call-ins or something of people's like reactions to some of the moves. Who knows? You never know. But look forward to that. And then also with all the other content as well. Towards the end of the week, there will be a full-on review of the MLB draft, which I did last year. So for those of you who are wondering where it is, it will be here this week. Most likely will be Thursday, might be Friday at the pace that I'm going, because I just have not been feeling well these last few days, and I'm just also just trying to fight through it. Also, I have to wait for a few of the picks to sign as well. We still have like about 5 guys who are expected to sign who have not signed yet. It's not official yet. So, we just have to wait for that. But everything is pretty much mapped out with that. So most likely you'll get it on Thursday. If not, you'll get it on Friday of my full review of all 20 picks that the Mets made. So as for the content, let's talk about the trade deadline that is coming. Now, the trade deadline, July 31st, from 1 to 4, which was when we are going to be going live. This is what they are talking about. So now, these last few reports that we have seen, most of them are very bold. Let's just say that. Mark Feinstein on X regarding the trade deadline, basically putting these teams into categories of who are going to be buyers and sellers, saying that one front office executive believes that the MLB trade market will heat up big time this week. During the process, this was put out 2 days ago, saying per multiple sources, the Rays are likely to both buy and sell, while the Mets, Padres, and Twins are among teams firmly in the buyer category. Now, Anthony DiComo, who writes for the Mets on MLB.com, talked about the Mets' plan. He said that after a couple of years of protecting their prospects, the Mets aren't going to go all in right now. Not with a club that was below 500 for much of early in the season. But veteran leaders have been vocal in advocating for help at the deadline. And the type of help that the roster needs is relatively easy to find. Now, John Heyman also said a little bit of a snippet from his article saying that the Mets do continue to seek bullpen help. as they remain a buyer for now. And that means that Pete Alonso appears to be staying. Of course, we've talked about Pete already. We already know that. And Carlos Ortiz, it is the 31st, last day of July when that happens. Now, the Mets' overall plan, which I kind of like it this way, and I kind of don't. Let's just say that the nerves are elevating going into this trade deadline because you don't know what direction the Mets are going to go in. You know that they're on the trajectory of buying. And when you talk about it as a whole, the Mets are basically just being put in these categories as to if they're going to be buyers, sellers, hard buyers. We had Jeff Passan talk about the Mets possibly being buyers and sellers, selling off a few pieces, retooling the roster a little bit to kind of even things out. That's kind of how we're looking at it. We know that the main area that they're going to go after is bullpen. I mean, the bullpen has been a problem. They're going to need to add one or two arms. I don't know if they're going to go over the top for it. If they go after Tanner Scott, who knows? But the Mets are going to have to piece together something in the bullpen. And I'm really hoping that they do move on from some of these pieces. Adam Ottavino has kind of hovered out of the circle of trust. Let's just say that. So hopefully he's on his way out. I don't think you're going to get anything back for him, but they were able to get something back for Dominic Leone, who was horrendous for us. They were able to get something back for him. So maybe they do move him. Maybe they don't. But with guys like Jake Diekman, I don't think you're going to get much back for him. I want to see them shop Jeff McNeil. Jose Quintana, it's kind of changed in the last hour or two, obviously, with Christian Scott. We did a whole segment about trading Jose Quintana. It's a different situation now. Is there a possibility that they do this soft sell, soft buy? I think that they're going to do these marginal additions. I don't think they're going to go all in. I don't think they're going to go Dodgers level of adding guys to an all-star team just to lose in the first round. But here's the problem here. I'm not one who really likes trading for bullpen arms. And the fact that the Mets are going to have to do that maybe 3 times in the next week, it does frighten me a little bit because there always seems to be an overpay that comes with these types of returns for relievers. It depends on the caliber of the reliever. We don't know what players they're targeting. We don't know who they've been attached to because usually you get those original guys who are at the top of the market. We know that they've been attached to trading for Chris Bryant for so long or trading for this starter. We haven't really heard much. And I like it. And I also dislike it. Obviously, we don't know what the direction they're going to go in. We know that they're going for bullpen, but we just don't know which arms. I think that you probably need to add a starting pitcher. You probably do after the Scott news, depending on the severity, but UCL, even if he is out for 15 days, he's probably going to be out for a little bit longer than that. He's going to have a rehab if he does come back at any point. I do think that they're going to buy, but they're going to address areas. I don't think that they're going to go after the star power. So if you're expecting them to make some ridiculous trade for Mike Trout, you're out of luck. If you're expecting them to throw a haul at the A's for Mason Miller, I don't think that happens. What I think they're going to try to do is kind of just plug in pieces to finish out the roster, to finish out a 26-man roster, to make it as deep as they possibly can. But also, I think that there's going to be some pieces on this team that do get moved, that are on the Major League roster. I do not think anybody in the top 5 of their prospects is going to get moved, even though they are in contention right now I don't think they want to do that. I think they want to get younger going forward. But we'll see how they do it. Is there role players that they bring in? Is there a featured piece that addresses, the defense? Is there a featured piece that allows them to get length out of the rotation? Who knows? There are some pieces that I do have on my wish list. I've talked about Lucas Urseg before. He's a reliever for the A's. Another guy there who nobody really talks about. Lucas Urseg was also drafted by David Stern, so you never know. The connection is there. It's a name that nobody's really talking about. It's one that really could just pop out of nowhere. So you never know. I don't think that they go after Kirby Yates. I don't think that they go after David Robertson. But you never know. I saw that the Mets, I believe it was Mets Marais talking about Paul Sewald as a possibility. I would not do that. I think that bridge is completely burned. But I think that they're going to try and be cautious with some of these moves. There's going to be moves that are made, but I don't think that the aggressiveness has really been figured out by anybody, from outside sources, from inside sources. They don't know what direction they're going to go in. And that's kind of how it is, because they're in this wild card race, and it's kind of this day-by-day thing where, yeah, they're in the trajectory where they're going to buy. They're most likely going to buy, because at the pace that they're going, they've been winning a lot of games. They gained a lot of ground in the wild card race. But, maybe it does turn for the better. Maybe they do buy. Maybe let's say they take these 2 from the Yankees. Then they take 3 out of 4 from the Braves. That puts them in a very, very big spot where, they're tied with the Braves. At the top of, this, at the top of this level where, I'm not putting the division really in question, but they could pass the Braves. It's possible. They're 3 games behind. The Braves are banged up. But this is one thing that a lot of my fellow Mets fans have talked about. Don't let the teams that you're in competition with get the reliever arms that you need to improve this team. And obviously, pitching is going to come at a premium. We all know that pitching is going to be a big factor. It always is. It's expensive, like we've said, in regards to the Mets rotation. There is a controllable starting pitcher out there that I would love to go after, but I don't think the Mets pursue him. But I think that the team that has him right now should probably trade him. But I don't think the Mets go of that caliber. I'm talking about Kevin Gausman. If you guys don't know, I would love to get Kevin Gausman. You have to be cautious about it. Let's just say that. But they have to be aware of what's going on. And Ranger Central saying, translation, don't be the Rangers and let the best deadline piece go to their rival. Exactly. There you go. Be able to cut it off at the right moment. Let's just say that. Swoop in when you need to swoop in. Only when it's necessary. Don't just be like, let's throw in this piece and give up the entire farm system just for kicks. Just to make it a little bit better. Just to make it make it a better team for fantasy baseball owners. No. That's not what we're doing. Is it a good fit for the team? That's what you're looking at. We'll see what happens. I would go after an outfielder as well. Let's just say that. I would, because I have concerns about Marte. I've had concerns about Marte for years about his health. So even though Starling Marte most likely will be back at some point, I still don't trust it. I think that if you're relying on Starling Marte to hold down the right field fort right now with his health, you're not going to go anywhere. I think, that conversation has to do with, do you put Michael Conforto in that conversation as a left-handed bat? Because the Mets have a lot of right-handed bats in this lineup. You have DJ Stewart, who has pretty much, he's overstayed his welcome now. It's time to move on. Do you replace that with Michael Conforto, who can play the outfield? Do you go after a Brent Rooker of Oakland? Do you go after Jesse Winker? We've seen that name be popped up a little bit with Mets media. We haven't seen the Mets be attached to them per sources, but the options are out there. So we'll see what happens. If the Mets actually want to, trade some assets that they know they have a surplus of, possibly happen. Now, somebody did ask in this chat, this is the last thing I'm going to say. We're going to cut it short here because, like I said, not feeling the best personally, like me, health-wise. Got a little bit of a cold right now, and me talking for 2 hours straight with nobody interrupting me. It'll take quite a toll. So I'm going to cut it off at the 90-minute mark instead of the 2-hour mark. So I apologize if this episode's a little bit short, but we will be back for a short amount of time because you do have a 2-game series instead of a 3-game series or a 4-game series. We will be back for another episode this week. So what do I think about the Jackie Bradley Jr. signing? This comes from Carlos Ortiz. Jackie Bradley Jr. He has not been good for a while at the major league level. He was crushing it for the Long Island Ducks this year, which is the independent league. We've made tons of jokes about the Ducks. I don't think that this really has much of a factor with Starling Marte. I feel like they're just kind of trying to replace Trace Thompson, who they let go, who was in the minors, and they granted him his release because there was a deadline for that. So, I think that, he's a good defender. He's a veteran guy. We know that a lot of guys like him. Maybe he comes out of the box like Jose Iglesias and starts hitting. Who knows? But it's a depth signing, organizational. It's a minor league deal. Maybe it may be possible. Maybe just like when the Mets signed Josh Reddick, we didn't see him at the major league level. So, maybe we don't even see him here. But, Ben Gamel is a DFA candidate. It's possible because they don't really use him that much. Gamel is not as good of a defender as Jackie Bradley Jr., where you're looking at it the best way. So it definitely will be an upgrade. You haven't really seen Ben Gamel take an AB in like games, in like 10 games. So we'll see what happens. I think it's a marginal signing. Again, he has the tools that can help you win. He's one of the marginal guys in the category. We know that he was attached to the Mets in their first year with Steve Cohen. We know that Jackie Bradley Jr. was signed in free agency with the Brewers by David Stearns. So there's a connection there. There's also a connection to Ben Gamel as well. So we'll see what happens. And obviously other little signings here and there. Logan Porter, again, like we've said, he may be on a major league contract, but more that has to do with the AAA depth, where Hayden Senger and Joe Hudson, both of them in AAA, those AAA catchers, both of them are injured. So he's pretty much replacing that, but they had to give him a major league deal, I guess. So right now, the roster is the roster right now, but there are going to be some significant moves that do get made, and we're going to be here for it, as per usual. I'm going to pop up the injury report, and then we'll get going. I kind of hinted pretty much all of these throughout the show, but let's just put them all in one place, shall we say. Kodai Senga, he did struggle in his final rehab assignment, which was a few days ago, but there is no concern with the Mets. Take that as you will. Again, the AAA level, I've talked about that before. But again, he is expected to return to the Mets starting rotation on Friday against the Braves. So very exciting. Good to have him back. I'm excited to have him at the top of the rotation. Jose Quintana, who will be starting tonight, he did run a very high fever on Friday night. He was scratched from his scheduled start versus the Marlins on Sunday, which was supposed to be the first game of the 4-game set, and he's going to start against the Yankees, like I just said. Starling Marte, Carlos Mendoza let us know that he started hitting off of a tee and playing catch earlier this week. Team doctors let him know that his right knee physically, visually looks a lot better, but there still is a little bit of inflammation that has to subside before he regains the ability to resume baseball activities and work his way back. And of course, the latest news that we got, which is unfortunate because we have a lot of promise from this kid, as we said. Christian Scott placed on the 15-day injured list due to a right UCL sprain. And we don't have a word yet of the severity. He still has to undergo the MRI. But the UCL, it's very important. That has to do with Tommy John surgery. So we don't know what goes on with that. And, puts a little bit of a question mark in the Mets starting rotation. We talked about that a little bit throughout the show. If you want to rewind for those conversations. But that's pretty much it. I'm going to cut this show short, of course, because it's only me here, so it's going to be tough for me to just talk on for 2 hours. So I think 90 minutes is enough. Again, we are going to have another episode that goes out really shortly because we have 2 games in between against the Yankees. Enjoy the Subway Series, everyone. Thank you for those of you who tuned in, who are watching, who listened, who watched the entire thing live, for those of you watching on replay, for those of you who came in for a little bit. Make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already. Turn on the post notifications for this very podcast, which is recorded regularly on Sunday and Thursdays, even though this is recorded on a Tuesday. That's kind of just how the schedule varies. They follow every series of games, so that's kind of how our timing goes. They're in between each series. And of course, you also have the audio version of this episode that will drop at 9 a.m. the following day. Make sure to follow us on TikTok and on X if you have not already. Follow everyone individually from myself and also my co-hosts Andrew and Frank, who are not here today. Make sure to do that. Guys, we are very close to the trade deadline. We are coming really close to the final stretch into the playoff race. Enjoy the Subway Series for those of you who I'm talking to in the future or talking to right now on playback. And let's go Mets. That's all I got to say. We'll see you guys next time.